On today's episode of the Parker Pod, I'm joined by Dr. Zack Venios. Zack is a doctor of physical therapy, a competitive bodybuilder, and the founder of Path to Progress online fitness coaching. His mission is all about helping people create lasting change in their fitness without letting it take over their life. Today, we'll dive into practical strategies for staying consistent, avoiding common fat loss mistakes, and building small wins that add up to big results. We'll also touch on the growing world of biohacking. Whether you're just starting your fitness journey or looking to take it to the next level, this conversation is packed with insights you won't want to miss. What's up, Zach? How are you doing today, man?
Pretty good. About yourself? Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely, man. Well, last time I had you on, you had so many great insights that a lot of people found super interesting. So it was only right that I had you on again. Just to get into a little bit about you, right now you're 1 week out from your next bodybuilding competition. Right now you're actually in peak week. So how has that personal journey been? Just battling through that again for what is it, the third or fourth time?
This is my second competitive season since I started competitive bodybuilding. I competed 3 years ago and then doing anywhere from 3 to 4, maybe even 5 shows through this month and then September. So been in prep since the end of January. I've been prepping. So that's just been fat loss through basically the whole year, little breaks here and there to pull back a little bit, and then peak weeks whenever shows come up. So feeling pretty good right now because it's all about chilling out and kind of refreshing going into show weekend. So
yeah, how is that? Because a lot of people from the amateur level, they'll do one show, boom, that's it. How have you been able to maintain not just absolutely blowing up at physically blowing up afterwards, it's over, time to have crumble cookie, time to have pizza, time to eat whatever I want? Is it more of a mental battle or a physical craving battle? How do you navigate that?
well, one, I've had the experience of doing a season a few years ago. I've had that under my belt, and after my first show, I did that, the whole post-show binge thing, and just experiencing it once and not being able to feel my feet at the end of the night because of all the swelling and water retention. You do that once and it's oh, okay, this isn't a good idea. But I went into this prep knowing, okay, this is the plan. I want to do X amount of shows because you spend 20 to 30 weeks in fat loss. 30 plus is what I'm going to be by mid-September. You spend that much time in prep, you don't want to just do one show. So that's enough internal motivation for me to, show's over, have, still spend time with family and have celebratory meal that's not on my typical plan afterwards. But when you have another show in 2 to 3 weeks, it's okay, I'm not going to throw away the last 25, 30 weeks and just totally fall off plan. That's just not even a thought that crosses my mind at this point. So it's the experience of having gone through that once already and already having goals set out before I'm done with show 1 or 2 and a plan moving forward. So that way there isn't this uncertainty after the show and risk of going off plan.
Yeah, so your goal every time, you say you have 3 to 5 shows between now and the end of September?
Yeah.
So your goal every time, is it to be lower in body fat percentage, or are you just trying to maintain that? To an extent, right? You kind of want to be a little bit better every time, but what's your goal from show to show? Do you have a certain body fat percentage that you want to be lower, or what's your plan with that?
Yeah, I always want to keep pushing a little bit further, but the deeper you get into prep, the more and more important recovery and stress management get. Whereas when you're in, the first half, it's okay, I have body fat stores available. I'm going to push my body, see where I can take it. But then once you get to, single digit body fat and you're trying to either hold it or keep digging even deeper, because your body works so hard against you, because you're doing something that it really doesn't want to do. Two opposite things is get to that single digit body fat and also retain as much muscle tissue as possible. Those are two very convoluting things that go against your body's metabolism and what it wants to do. It wants to stay stable, at a nice healthy body fat percent. And it costs the body, more energy to hold higher amounts of muscle tissue. So you're asking it to do something that, once you get at the end of contest prep and you really do get that lean, it seems like physiologically impossible at a certain point. So given that, you really have to know when to pull back on the training, know when to add a little bit more food back into the diet at certain points, because that's what's going to keep you in a long competitive season without crashing.
Yeah, and you self-coach, right? You don't have a coach, or do you rely on any outside resource to kind of keep you in line or keep you in check at all?
Yeah, I'm self-coached. And then you still, even if you are self-coached, you should always have people in your corner. So I have my brother, he's competed before. Whenever I go and make decisions, either as far as pushing further fat loss or peak week strategies, I at least have him to just bounce my ideas off of, so that it's not just me living in my head. Because if it's just you and you're at this point, you can start making rash decisions that may work against you. So, but yeah, for the most part, very self-coached, and then having him in my corner.
Yeah. So you have put a lot of work and a lot of experience on, staying consistent in fitness and staying consistent at a very, very high level. It's something that only a very few amount of people can achieve and set their mind to. But a lot of people struggle just to stay consistent in fitness in general. So from your experience, what are some simple practical steps that people can take so that fitness enhances their lifestyle and it doesn't just add a bunch of stress to it?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying what we just talked about with bodybuilding. What I'm doing right now is not the example of that.
Yeah.
So I'm doing something that's very extreme, and it adds stress to my life and takes away from my well-being in certain ways. So that's just because I have extreme goals. So the more extreme you get with fitness, the more it probably will take away from your well-being. But, if we're talking somebody general population, that's somebody I would speak to much differently than I would if I were coaching a competitive bodybuilder. So it all depends what your goal is, where you're starting from, and where you're trying to get to. So considering all those things, that's the first thing. It shouldn't feel like it's adding stress to your life. It should feel like it is enhancing your life and actually improving your ability to function in endeavors outside of fitness. So whether that be with your relationships, your job, whatever it is. So I would say first, figuring out what your goals are, and then asking yourself, what is a realistic plan that I can commit to? So the biggest mistake people will make is they go from no consistency at all, maybe just working out here and there, and then they go and they try and just flip a whole 180. They try and, follow the most regimented diet ever. They try and go to the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week when they were barely making it there once or twice. And then they wonder why after 3 weeks, they're like, this is stupid, and they just throw it away. So it's doing that 180, going from 0 to 100, and just not, starting with just small wins, stacking it up, building consistent habits. Also, their mindset as well. So let's say you have somebody that maybe did do the right thing and taking the small steps. Okay, maybe I'll start with hitting a consistent step count every day and go to the gym twice a week. Maybe I'll just worry about hitting a protein goal, not, being so strict about a full diet spread. But then they still their attitude isn't really gravitated towards it. So usually this is the person who has just focused on superficial body fat, body weight, body composition goals. And then they get X amount of weeks into their plan, and then they kind of lose motivation and fall off, and they just go through this never ending cycle. Well, that's a case where, okay, you need to dig a little bit deeper as to why you started a fitness journey, and maybe realize more benefits that are occurring behind the scenes that you're just not aware of. Like, let's say, I'm sleeping better, or my knee hurts less, or, my blood markers, like my blood sugar and blood pressure, have gone down. I'm more efficient at my job throughout the day. Things like this that actually have deeper meanings. Once you tie your improved health and fitness to these things, that's what really keeps you in it for the long haul. And if you start doing it more for these reasons, you're going to see those superficial changes that you sought out from the start. And, whatever it is, losing X amount of weight on the scale, improving in body composition, those things will come with it. But if you solely focus on those things, you're probably going to fall off at a certain point.
Yeah, like I remember when I first started my weight loss journey specifically, I like every single day. I went outside and I like at the very beginning of it, it was between like, at the very, very beginning, it was like walking to the end of the block, like at least going outside. Like it was, believe me, it was rough. And then it kind of snowballed. And like for the majority of the first month when I was losing weight, I did between like 3 to 4 miles a day, just like walking. And then I would like go to the gym and like lift and work out. And at the end of the first month, I lost 15 pounds. But like for some reason, that wasn't enough for me. Like I was I'm like, I did all this work and I'm 15 pounds down. Like I felt like the work that I did, I should be down 30 or 40. Like just my focus on that actually led me to, I was taking pictures of myself like every like day or every like 2 or 3 days. I deleted all of them and I wish I had them now. But like that initial, so focused on like that superficial aspect of it, I can speak from experience, is detrimental to you because I almost quit. I almost stopped. But like the next day I was like, just go outside, just keep going. And then eventually it turned into something, a lot bigger than 15 pounds. But you just feel better. You feel better overall. And like, my cardiovascular system is better. Like that's something that I'm very appreciative of. My work ethic is better. That's something that I'm very appreciative of. And like you were just talking about mindset and, you do online coaching. So how do you help your clients shift from that deprivation mindset, that mindset of because I'm not losing body fat or because I'm not losing the weight that I thought I was going to lose? How do you shift them from that mindset to an appreciation mindset when it comes to their health and their nutrition outside of just like, hey, don't worry about that? But like, how do you re-angle the way they look at it?
Yeah, so it's very common for when people start on an endeavor related to health and fitness, just trying to better themselves. It's very common to hear like, oh, I gotta eat these foods, or I gotta spend this amount of time going to the gym. And it feels like it goes back to feeling like they're taking away from their life. But when you start looking at it, or like, I can't have all these fun foods in my diet or whatever, instead of looking at it that way, you look at, say, what's a typical healthy meal, like a meat, veggie, fruit, rice, potato, something like that. They're like, oh, this is so boring. I have to do this all day, every day. But when you start drawing the connections, kind of like how we talked about earlier, like when I do eat this way, all these positive benefits happen. So, and then you start to realize, when they do fall off at a certain point, like here and there, and they do have, say, like a cheat meal, and they realize how terrible it makes them feel, it's very hard to then throw your plan away when you associate, your positive diet changes, positive exercise changes with all those deeper benefits that you experience in life. Once you make that connection, you are never, or very rarely, going to want to deviate from your plan. and you'll learn to love it versus hate it, because you're not just looking at it as a means of achieving a superficial goal, like losing the weight or building muscle, whatever it is. So that's the main thing that I try and get somebody to realize, to keep them in the game for the long haul. So then, like, at a certain point, they can self-manage and, push themselves and coach themselves. They don't need me at a certain point unless they have goal changes or want to keep taking things, steps further. So that's the number one thing to make yourself really independent in that process, is learning how to flip that mindset. And you can apply that to anything outside of health and fitness. It's just like, it just comes down to finding whatever positives in whatever negatively perceived situation that you're in. Like in my case, being, single digit body fat, like I get cold, tired, hungry, stressed, anxious, irritable, everything. So every time I catch myself in a situation where I am like kind of like talking to myself in that negative light, or having that deprivation mindset, like it's trained at this point. Like I can flip it like that, no matter how terrible things feel. I can always be like, instead of complaining about that stuff, I can be like, I get to choose to do this. There's plenty of people in the world that don't get to choose to be, I don't even want to say malnourished, because I'm eating a good amount of food. Like I'm still eating a good amount of food relative to other people who are starving in the world. And, I have all the clothes available to me. Like I chose to do this. Like that's one way how you can flip it in somebody like my case, for example. And that's an extreme example, but that's how I try to get people to think.
Have you ever had a client that, maybe their mindset wasn't all the way there and you had to really dig into their mindset and shift them? And how was that experience for you?
Yeah. This can work for the majority of people that start out in a health and fitness journey. But there are plenty of people that it doesn't matter. They're just not going to be best friends with diet and exercise. Like I see it all the time, and mostly my physical therapy practice. Most of the time, not most of the time, but some patients are just there because they have to be. Like they got injured, or they've been dealing with this low back pain for 20 years, and they don't know what a gram of protein is. And, and they're not willing to know either. So, but I have to still respect that and just try and develop methods that best fit their lifestyle, that are going to keep them consistent. And it looks so different for everybody. So I'm not saying that you have to be best friends with a diet and exercise plan, but you do have to learn. If you are going to be somebody that just is not willing to do that, you have to be willing to at least work with it. So I would say that's at least the bare minimum, is at least be willing to work with it. And again, we're going back to realizing the deeper meaning. If somebody can draw that deeper meaning connection between that, that's going to be enough to at least get them to that point.
Yeah, I remember when I was like doing personal training for a while, the people that stuck with it were the people that I really dug into. What is your why? Why do you want to do this? And whenever it was outside of, well, I want to look good in this dress, like that worked. But once you fit in the dress, you felt like it was over. Right. Mm-hmm. But the people that were like, well, I have 2 daughters. I remember one guy specifically, he was like, I have 2 daughters and I want to be able to play with them. I want to be able to be healthy enough to walk them down the aisle on their wedding day, because they're relatively young and I'm not, I'm older. He's like, I want to be able to do these things. If they have children, I want to be able to play with those children. And because he dug so deeply into that why, he was there on time every day, listened to everything that I said, every kind of nutrition advice, every kind of lifting advice. I would send him plans. He would do it on the weeks that he wasn't with me or that he couldn't be with me. Hey, Joe, I'm on vacation for work. These are the things that I have at my disposal at the hotel gym. What can I do with this stuff? Like, he was so invested because his investment went beyond, I want to look good in this t-shirt. Like, and the why was so dug in. And I feel like that connection is huge, like you were saying. And for people like you and me, protein is so like, duh. Like, it's so like in our face. Like, yeah, that's what you need to consume. And it takes a while. I mean, it took a while for me to be like, wait, some of these people don't even know what macros are. They have no idea. We played football. We strength trained our whole lives. We did all these things that were like, yeah, obviously our coaches would say, hey, before the game, you need to carb up. Hey, the night before, salt your food. You need your sodium. Hey, you need to make sure you're eating a lot of protein. Hey, like, and they just reiterated this stuff to us to a point where it was like, yeah, that's exactly what you do. But for some people, it's not like that. And it's just, it was a hard mindset transition to put myself in someone else's shoes, as I'm sure it is for you, or it was at least for you at first. But now that you've learned, you're kind of like, yeah, like that's what it is. And speaking of like protein and macros, you're like a huge fan of structured meal planning. I mean, obviously you do bodybuilding. It's something that you have to do to take off stress, because probably if you had to decide every single meal all the time while in prep, that would probably be that would add more stress to your situation, right? So why do you recommend that? Do you recommend that for people that are just trying to lose weight and gain fitness? And if you do, why do you recommend that over like a more flexible fit your macros approach?
Most people, yes, I would recommend that too, especially people that are like not the example that we just talked about, somebody that is just working with health and fitness to meet those deeper meaning goals. We're probably focused on other things outside of following like a full regimented meal plan, but people that are like actually really trying to get into it, assuming that, you know, you're a typical general population, you have 1 to 2 jobs, you have other priorities outside of health and fitness. You want to make your meal plan as easy to follow and eliminate as many decisions that you have to make as possible. And the way I've seen that play out best is by having a structured meal plan with, you know, obviously available swaps here and there. So like if you have ground beef plan, you can switch it for ground turkey if you just feel like switching things up, or fish, chicken, whatever. But if you're doing like a if it fits your macros approach and you're trying to make every single day, every single meal look different, one, it takes a ton of mental energy to do that and a ton of extra time to try and, you know, look up all the different recipes, prepare the different meals. And most people just don't have the time or energy to do that. So if you're doing that, you have to know, what foods am I eating? How much of it am I eating? Why is it in place at this time of the day? And when am I eating it? With a meal plan, all you need to know is when. You don't need to know anything else. And then that saves a lot of meaningless decision making that you can put towards other things that matter most in your life. And it also minimizes the room for error. So like if you don't have meals prepared and then you find that your day changes and you're thrown off schedule, you're going to be more likely to make decisions that, you know, take you further away from your goals. So I find that having a meal plan with, you know, clear indicated food swaps also indicated in the plan is going to keep you most consistent and just minimize that room for error. And it should be made up of, you know, foods that you like and enjoy. Like, I'm not saying that you can't change up your diet just be, you know, to fulfill that whatever that need would be as far as like a craving. But you want to minimize the food focus also as well. You used me as the example in the beginning. Right now, if I'm in a fat loss phase, I want to minimize my food focus, because then you're going to be more and more likely to just think about food and increase that likelihood of you making a decision that's going to take you further away from your goal. It can be helpful, say in the case of somebody who's coming from more of like, they're a foodie, maybe somebody coming in with an eating disorder that's really hyper focused on food. I would say at the start, that's a case where it'd be a good idea to have that like really flexible, if it fits your macros approach, because they at least learn to, hit their daily macros while still being able to really enjoy themselves as far as the structure of their diet goes. But then I would just gradually try and wean them more towards more of a set meal plan where there's less and less variability. But at least that they know they have the option to do so if they spend the practice and condition themselves to be able to do that. That's a more of a rare case. Most people I would say would just benefit from preparing their meals ahead of time and just minimizing the extra needless decision making that goes into structuring your weekly nutrition.
What are some of like you said, like a lot of people, especially in the beginning, they struggle with that. So like, what are some of your best strategies to make it easy? Because I know like for a lot of people that I know, they're like, oh, well, if I create an entire week's worth of meals, I cook them on Sunday and I don't cook till next Sunday or whatever. Like, I'm afraid it's going to get, bacteria on it, or I'm afraid that's just some things that I've heard in my life. Like, oh, you're doing your meals for the whole week. Like, that's bad. Why would you do that? It can get bacteria on it or whatever. So like, what are some of the best strategies that you've employed to make it healthy and safe and, realistic for yourself?
Well, one thing I would probably be willing to bet on is whoever's trying to crucify you for that is probably not somebody that's practicing very healthy habits. Like you take somebody who's not doing anything to better themselves from a nutrition standpoint, and then they go and actually do this, they're going from no benefit at all to they're collecting all the money. They're picking up all the big rocks. Worrying about something as small as the bacteria that's going to collect on the food, like that's such a 1% thing that's so minuscule, and all the benefit that you're getting from prepping your meals ahead of time.
Yeah.
But then I would just say, okay, do half your meals in the beginning of the week and then do the other half in the middle of the week. It's a very simple fix if you're really, really worried about that. I personally am not. I still have freaking plastic Tupperware, so if you want to crucify me for that, whatever. But I would make sure that when you are considering those things that you're not, stepping over dollars for pennies. Don't worry about that if you're somebody in that case.
No, yeah. I got
the only food I would really pay attention to is, say, white rice. Because that's like one food that is known to collect bacteria pretty quick. So if you're doing rice, I would say, so this is something I do, prep everything else that's going to be in that meal for the week, and then I'll do half my rice in the beginning of the week, and then I'll just cook a bunch of rice midway through the week. All I got to do is just throw the rice in those meals that I already prepared. That's something I do just to make it a little bit easier. But outside of that, I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I do the bagged rice. I know it's probably not the optimal and the best. Definitely not the cheapest either.
That's the only That's the only trade-off. It's not the cheapest.
Yeah. It's Costco got a pretty good deal though. It's like $11 for 6 bags of rice, so it's like 12 servings, so it's a little under $1 a serving. But if they also have 40-pound bag of rice for $20, so like
the 50
definitely cheaper. Yeah, definitely cheaper in that regard. Also, I got the plastic containers from there too. It's like 50 containers for $8, $7, something like that.
Depends. It all depends on where you're coming from. Like, you can't. We were talking about past experiences with clients. If you have a client that's already budgeting the hell out of their finances to just hire you as a trainer, what are you going to do? Ask them to go buy 16 glass Tupperware sets just because it's the quote unquote optimal or the healthiest strategy? No. Is there a 1% detriment to their health if they just reheat plastic Tupperwares all week. Yeah, but the trade-off is so much more worth it, considering that on the positive side, they have you as a trainer, and now they're prepping a bunch of healthy meals for the entire week when they weren't doing that already. Like you have to weigh these things out when you're talking about what is optimal in health and fitness and how you're going to best tie it into your plan.
Yeah, and in my experience too, the people that truly want to optimize their health, they'll get there. But if you, like you said before, like it's the small steps. So if you give them this, like, hey, you got to buy a glass Tupperware, you have to take the lid off when you heat it up. You have to make sure that you're buying premium, like all this different stuff. You got to get this kind of protein powder. You have to get this. They're like, well, this is now, I pay you however much an hour. Now I have to go spend $600 telling me this just to be healthy. Like, this is insane. Like, that's why I think a lot of misconceptions get thrown out about like health being super expensive, where like it's not. White rice and broccoli and chicken breasts are, I mean, to my knowledge, 3 of the cheapest things you can buy at a grocery store.
Yeah, and like there's tons of like I've been getting this 2-pound bag of frozen fish, not even at a bulk store, just my normal grocery store. $5 for 2 pounds of fish. And then if you go through the meat section, you see those yellow reduced tags. You buy as many as you can and freeze them. There's plenty of ways to go about it. Buying your fruits and veggies frozen. That's another easy way to do it. Just things like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong too. If they're frozen and they're flash frozen, don't they typically have more nutrients than the fresh food, like the fresh fruit and vegetables? Or is that a misconception that
I actually have no idea.
Okay. All right.
The point is they're both good for you. That's what we're saying here.
They're both better than Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwiches. Yeah,
yes.
For sure. Yeah. Kind of making a little bit of a shift from the nutrition aspect of it to the strength training and cardio, the workout aspect of it. A lot of people think that they need cardio in order to lose weight. And I know you're not someone who's like, don't ever do cardio. I'm sure you've used it in some of your client workouts as well. But why do you think there's such an emphasis on cardio and not enough emphasis on strength training?
Yeah, you see it a lot when people go on a cutting phase, fat loss phase, whether or not they were resistance training beforehand. It's the classic start hammering cardio, start really cutting carbohydrates, like going straight keto. I'm going to do keto and do a ton of cardio. The thing is, though, that it can work initially in the first few weeks, but when you are putting yourself in a caloric deficit, it's something your body doesn't want to do. Depends on where you're starting from. So if you're starting from a really obese state, this stuff doesn't matter because you have so much fat store available that your body would never really tap into muscle tissue as a fuel source. But if you're somebody that's trying to get to the lower teens of body fat percentage, high single digits, things like that, more aggressive health and fitness goals, which at a certain point, you don't really consider them health goals. Just getting in shape. What you're doing when you do that, and if you're just throwing your resistance training out the window, is that you're telling your body, I don't need to maintain muscle tissue in order to survive. And the thing is, most people aren't just trying to lose weight. They want to see changes in body composition when they lose weight. So if your strategy is just a ton of cardio, seriously limiting your diet, and then not focusing on resistance training, you're just going to end up becoming a smaller version of yourself. And you might ask, oh, well, why does my body want to use muscle as a fuel source? Because when you're looking at fat tissue compared to muscle tissue, it costs your body much more energy to maintain muscle on its frame compared to fat stores, which are more readily, easily available fuel sources. So you need to give it a reason to hold on to that muscle tissue when you do put yourself in a calorie deficit, because your body wants to maintain homeostasis. It doesn't really want to lose weight or get leaner, because that's, when you're looking at it from a primalistic standpoint, that's not good for survival. So no matter the goal, or no matter your exercise plan going into it. Resistance training has to be the highest priority within it. You can't, once you start prioritizing cardiovascular workouts over your resistance training and you start to get weaker across the board, that's when you're putting your body in a place where you can't actually deliver that resistance training stimulus to maintain the muscle tissue. And then that's when your body can start eating into that muscle tissue as a fuel source. And this becomes more and more important the leaner you get. So when I was talking about where I'm at in my bodybuilding prep now, like I'm at near the leanest I'm going to get. That's why I said like stress management and recovery is more important now than ever, because my body's in much more of a fragile state. So the more and more extreme you get with cutting and fat loss, the more and more you have to keep that resistance training a priority within that plan.
For sure. And I actually noticed that for me, when I was going through the weight loss myself, it got to a point where I was 227. I remember looking at it, I was 227, but I was 27% body fat, which is not like great. And I felt like, yo, what am I doing wrong? Like, what's like I'm losing all this weight, but I'm still at like, granted, I was at like 51% body fat, but let's not talk about that. That was, I lost 25% body fat, but it was still, it was rough for me because I'm like, oh, I'm not even at a healthy body fat percentage. Like, this is rough. So I started to shift my focus to at least eating to my BMR, which is my basal metabolic rate. For those of you that don't know that, I would eat to my BMR, but still strength train and then still do a little bit of cardio. It was hard for me to give up the cardio completely. And what I saw was my body fat percentage went from 27% to what it is now. It is 14%, 14.2% last time I got checked. So it cut down my body fat significantly. But what happened is right now I'm 244. I'm not 227 anymore. So even though I'm like, it was such a hard mental battle because I'm like looking at the scale. I'm like, why is the scale going up? But I feel so much better. I went from like my bench dropped significantly. And like, for me, like that was a huge, just to be honest, a huge ego kick, because I was like, my bench, like when I was big, I like got 405 at one time, but I was like, it wasn't that impressive because I was like 325 or 330. Like, to each their own. If you think it's impressive, whatever. But like, I went down to like, I was like 227 and I was benching like maybe 225 for one or for two. And it felt like all of my muscle went away. Like I'm benching my body weight now. I'm not even benching above my body weight. And I'm like, okay, what has to change here? And it wasn't until I employed, when we talked about it and I employed some of the like focusing on strength training above focusing on cardio, that now I feel better. B, my BMR is higher because I have more muscle mass on my body. So it takes my body's BMR is higher because muscle weighs more than fat. And I believe it's like the more muscle you have on your body, the higher your BMR is in general, like generally speaking.
That's like the short way of putting like what I kind of went into. So you want to be able to keep your metabolism as high, your resting metabolic rate as high as you can whenever you're going through a cutting phase. So if you're doing a ton of cardio, your body's going to try and because you're burning so many calories with your activity, your body's going to try and become more efficient with the calories it burns at rest. So the calories that you're burning when you're not exercising. So if you do it wrong, at the end, what you're left with is you're just a smaller version at the same body composition as what you started. Now your metabolism's lower, like your resting metabolic rate, because you burned off a ton of muscle in the process. And now you're going to be more prone to putting body fat back on, because then when you go back to what you were doing, because people yo-yo all the time, when you go back to what you were doing, now your 3,000 calories that you were eating every day before that is more of a surplus now. So if you were putting on a pound a week before on that amount of food, you might be putting on 1.5 to 2 pounds a week, because now your metabolism is slower. So you want to play that long game. It's you can relate it to, like, the stock market is a good analogy. So if you're somebody that's into that, I'm not, but it's my favorite analogy for this. Somebody that tries to lose weight entirely through their activity alone, activity, cardio, whatever. That's like the day trader. They're spending all day on the computer making these flips and changes. Like, they're actively doing the work to accomplish that energy burn per se. But having the muscle, like, if you do it the right way and you actually can retain muscle tissue, that's like an investment in something that's making the money for you. So, like, more passive income. Like, that's you investing in a rental property. That rental property is doing all the work for you, and you don't have to manage it at all. You don't have to spend the time managing it, other than like your normal workouts where you actually strength train. But outside of those workouts, you're keeping that influx of cash coming in, and you're not actively working for it. So that's like my analogy for that scenario.
Yeah, like with the rental property, it's kind of like if it needs some maintenance, that's like you going to the gym.
Yeah.
But it's very minimal as opposed to like constantly running like all the time, and like the day trading analogy. I do like that because I am in that. So I do get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too, like I know especially women, like when they strength train, they're like, well, I don't want to get super bulky. Like I don't want to like get like shredded or like super muscular. And like one misconception is like, oh, don't worry, like
You know how hard it is for men to do that?
Yeah, I was like, don't worry, like, not to be like this because it is possible. I'm not saying women can't do it, but I'm like, it's extremely hard. Like that is a 1% of 1% of people that can get to that level. So you doing 40-pound RDLs rather than 20-pound RDLs, like it's not gonna be. You're not gonna wake up tomorrow with rounded shoulders and a shredded back. Like trust me, like you'll be fine.
But you're going to feel awesome.
Yeah, exactly. What is do you know like chemically what that is? Like what happens when you lift and why you feel so great after you get a great workout in?
I don't think it's any different for lifting than compared to other forms of exercise. Like, you hear people talk about the runner's high.
Yeah.
I just think it's a dopamine response. You're releasing the endorphins whenever you, and if you're somebody that's goal oriented, lifting especially, you have these PRs in your head that you want to hit with each workout. You not only have the dopamine hits from just exercising in general, but then when you keep racking up these small little PRs each time you go into lift, like that in itself is also all the investment you need to get that lifter's high per se.
Yeah. I personally right now I'm at a point where like my lifts are where they are. Like my deadlifts, I can get through them, but my hands, like it falls through my hands. And I'm having a rough time getting over the mental hump of you probably need straps. And I don't know. Do you use straps when you lift?
But yeah,
It's definitely a pride thing. Like for me, like 100%, like going like, oh, I don't need straps when I lift. But like at the same time, I'm dropping weight because I can't hold on to it with my hands.
well, you got to flip it. Like when you get to a point where you're that strong, you could say, my legs and back are just that much stronger than my grip now. Like I need it. If you're able to deadlift without your straps, you're probably not deadlifting much. So I would, it's quite the opposite as far as the pride hit goes. No, I use them all the time, especially, especially like from a bodybuilding perspective, if I'm trying to train my back, or if I'm trying to make sure, if I'm doing stiff-legged deadlifts, I want my hamstrings and glutes to be the reason that I fail the exercise and not my grip. I'm going to use straps because that's just the goal.
Yeah, because when I do it, I'm like, that wasn't even hard for my legs. It's just when I got up there and I got through it, I couldn't, because like for me, I want to hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to hold on to it and be like, yes, I lifted it, and then drop it. I don't want to like just get up there and then go slipping out of my hands and then drop it.
Yeah.
But like a very, very me response to that is, well, why don't I just train my grip strength better? Like it's like it's duality, right? Because I know the fix. Like I know the fix, but I just don't want to do it. And it's pure pride, man. It's pure pride. Same with a belt. I don't lift with a belt. Is that something that you use?
No, I haven't used a belt since I power lifted years ago.
Okay. And why is that?
It's just something I stopped doing. I never, once I stopped powerlifting and got more into bodybuilding, like I was never really working with loads of 1 to 3. Well, that's a lie. No, I had a deadlifting stint last year where I was like pushing 1 rep max. But no, like once I learned how to properly brace my core without needing the belt as a teaching tool to do that, I kind of just went without it. It's just something I started doing, but I definitely think that because I wasn't always somebody with the most developed core and abdominals and obliques and all that. But once I stopped using the belt and I really just braced hard with my intrinsic core muscles, I started seeing a lot more development there. I do attribute a little bit of that to not using a belt to create that abdominal pressure to lift heavy weight. But I didn't start doing that with that being the goal in mind. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. I do feel that as well, though. I feel like my core definitely does get a better workout when, I mean, I can't even compare it because I've never used a belt, but it definitely, it feels better. But I also feel like to an extent, if I did use a belt, I would be more mentally able to push through a lift. Do you feel like that was the case for you?
Oh yeah, like if your goal is to lift the most amount of weight possible, you're going to be able to do a little bit more with the belt more than likely. If you're somebody that's more like strongman powerlifting oriented, yeah, they all wear belts even when they bench to create just to create a little bit more pressure in their core to be able to brace against the heavy lift.
Okay.
So it just depends what the goal is. Or, like I said before, it's a great teaching tool to learn how to brace. It gives you something pressing against your core that, okay, when you properly brace, this belt should feel really, really tight around your waist when you're going to lift. And then once they learn to create that pressure without the belt, it's not something that's absolutely necessary at that point.
Yeah, it really promotes like mind muscle connection too. From like how you're describing it, like then you think about even when you don't have it on, you think about bracing because like you're used to having that belt there. So you just think about like bracing your core in the proper way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of like small goals, like hitting goals in general, what are some small steps that you feel like people can take at the start of their journey outside of what we talked about, like trying to just hit protein goals or trying to just, get to the gym? I mean, I know those are small steps, but outside of those things, what are some best practices that you feel like people can employ?
Yeah, I would say starting with hitting a step goal every day. Something to just get the ball rolling. And it's going to be very beneficial if you're somebody that had a low step count. So if you're, maybe you work more of a sedentary job and maybe only got 3,000 steps a day on average, start with trying to hit 5,000 a day. And then like 7,000's the national recommendation for what you'd be considered, a moderately active individual. Some references will say below 7 is what they consider sedentary. But I would say that's the easiest one that almost anybody can do. It's the least stressful. You don't need a gym to do that. All you need is a safe place to walk. That's about it. Yeah. But doing something like that, okay, that they've got a win there and they've already built a consistent habit. This is going to facilitate greater change in whatever the next step is for that person and being able to build consistency there. And I think it's good to go one thing at a time, because if you kind of used an example earlier where you give somebody 10 things to focus and work on at the very start of a journey. If they mess one up, they automatically think everything is a failure. So that's why just one thing at a time is probably going to lead to better results in the end. And then from there, I would say, okay, if they're not somebody that monitor their diet regularly, let's say, okay, you need to get a serving of either a fruit or a vegetable with each meal you eat. I haven't told them how many meals that I want them to eat, because all I care about is that when they do eat, they do this one thing. It can look so different for anybody, no matter where they're starting from. Those two things that I mentioned might be very basic for somebody else. So I would say if it's ground zero, I would say like the step count would be the starting point. Then I would say pick one aspect that you want them to have in a meal, then have them do that consistently. And then it's okay, maybe let's try training, like an actual structured workout. It could be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes where you're actually focusing on doing, let's give them 2 exercises, an upper body and a lower body exercise. That's all they're going either into it could be a home workout, or they're going into their apartment gym, whatever it is. All they're spending is 10 minutes on something like that. 2 things, 2 movements. So it's just these baby steps. So then before you know it, they're consistently training. They have a high activity level that doesn't consider them sedentary anymore, and they're making healthy dietary choices. Whereas if you told them to go do all that right at the beginning, they'd probably be like, that's just too much. So it just all depends on the starting point, and it all depends on what the end goal is. But it's just stacking up the small wins, and before you know it, you're on the ball with everything.
Yeah, and that can be applied to almost everyone, right? Like even if it's like if I personally came to you, I'm like, hey Zach, like I hit my protein goal. I every day I hit my protein goal. I work out 6 days a week. I do some form of like moderate cardio, 5 to 6 days a week, depending on the day. I, hit 7,000-8,000 steps a day. I still think, I don't know if you still think that like just adding, okay, let's add one more thing to it, because like I feel like that can apply to anyone, but just maybe at a different level.
Yeah, that's when I would look at the grand scope of their lifestyle and see what are some other things that maybe they're doing, either that they're doing or not doing, that are working against their goals. So let's say you're doing all that, but you're still going out Friday and Saturday nights every weekend and consuming alcohol. That's like somebody would be like, okay, go out, but on one of those 2 nights, pick one, you can't have a sip of alcohol. So something like that. It's that consistent sleep habits, like that's a big one that people really don't realize the impact of when it comes to either building muscle or losing body fat. So it just depends if they're ready to make those changes or not at that point. Or like what is keeping them from making those changes? Is it that they spend so much time whether it be at the gym or focusing on these other aspects that you already have them doing that are keeping them from doing that? Usually it's not the case, but just making sure that, figuring out why they're not doing those things, asking them why, instead of just telling them, okay, sleep more or go out less or consume less alcohol, do less drugs. Like kind of it goes back to what you say about figuring out why people are doing something or why they're not doing something.
Yeah, and those are like the main points, right? Like make sure your nutrition's good, make sure you're working out, make sure you're getting enough sleep, right? But then a lot of people, and this is like huge right now, it's biohacking, right? So it's cold plunges, it's sauna, it's if I have this supplement in the morning before I eat anything, it's going to help me be great throughout the day. or, you know, I'm not too familiar on a lot of biohacking stuff, or, oh, if I eat liver's going to give me everything that I need to survive. You know, so I know you have like a pretty hard stance on like small habits and getting all these things like sleep, steps, nutrition, workouts. What role do you think biohacking plays in the fitness world today? And what do you think is the true overall impact of those things?
Yeah, they're the shiny toys, that's for sure. If we're talking about somebody who isn't nailing the basics already, then I would say that these do not matter and shouldn't be stressed in their health and fitness regimen. Until somebody's nailing all the basics of consistent exercise regimen, good amount of activity, consistent nutrition plan, and has, you know, the independence with decision making around those things, they do not need to worry about any of that stuff, because those are the pennies, and then the big rocks are what I just mentioned there, those main pillars. But if you're somebody that's already kind of nailing all those things and you're thinking, okay, maybe I can just get like that 1% extra from whatever it would be, like red light therapy or doing a cold plunge before my workout. It's just one of those things where try it, see how you feel, see what results you get from it, and if you deem it worth the trade-off, then go for it. As long as those things aren't taking away from the big rocks. So if you're somebody that, you know, has those main things dialed in, but adding in 30 minutes of sauna at the end of a workout now leads you to get less sleep at night or give you less time to prep your meals for the next day, that's not a good trade-off. So if you have the time for these things and that you can fit them, you can add them into your regimen without them adding stress into your life, then I'd say, yeah, like go for it. Why not? Like if it feels good, it feels good. That's what I'd say when it comes to those things. Like from they say cold exposure from a research standpoint, like it's been shown to increase excitability of the nervous system. So you have some people doing it before they go work out because it like really wakes up the body and they feel stronger when they lift. But in my case, I'd be like, good God, that's just something that doesn't sound appealing to me. So it probably wouldn't work for me. But if it works for somebody else, I'm not going to be like, oh, this doesn't work. Like it sucked for me. No. So it's one of those, if it feels good, it feels good. And if it doesn't take away from the main things that are actually going to get you progress, then go for it.
Yeah, I think and there's also like two different sides of cold plunging and cold exposure too, right? Like there's that excitability before a workout to get you dialed in and to get you ready for the lift. But then there's also the other side where people are like, no, after the lift, you use it to recover. You don't use it for before the lift, you use it for after the lift. And I was talking to someone at a gym. I was thinking about going to a different gym, but you know, they advertised a bunch of different things on their website, and then I got there, they're like, well, we don't have that, we don't have that, we don't have that, we don't have that. I was like, okay, well, this isn't gonna be worth my time. Yeah, unlimited cold plunges. Oh, we don't have a cold plunge. Unlimited jujitsu classes. Oh, we don't have jujitsu. Unlimited suction cup therapy. Oh, we don't have that anymore. Okay, well, what do you have? You have a gym. I'm not paying almost $200 a month for a gym. Anyway, huge sidebar.
Yeah.
But he was telling me, he was like, oh, we do have cryotherapy though. It's cold air. I can hook it up for you after your workout. And I was like, well, you should like, you know, I would rather do that before my workout, not after my workout, because I'm trying to gain that excited. That's just how I want to lift. I want to lift with that like that rush, that now it's time to lift heavy. It's time to, you know, really get my workout in. But that's just me. What is your stance on, you know, before and after with the cold exposure specifically? I know you had said before a workout, but how can people, you know, knowledge is power. How can people utilize that? properly?
Yeah, I would say if there is any benefit to it, it's probably more so what I said earlier in doing it before to increase that excitability, like really wake you up and get you going. But it's probably going to be more of a detriment more than anything after a workout because of its anti-inflammatory properties. So after a workout, when it's time for muscle recovery, your body uses inflammation as a healing process. The thing with cold exposure is it reduces that process. So it actually is going to inhibit the amount your muscle can recover and build back stronger before your next workout, or at least build back to be able to do your next workout. You see athletes do it a lot in season because they're just trying to get to their next practice or game. It doesn't matter how they feel. It doesn't matter if they are recovered. The point is they do that then to at least reduce the amount of pain that they feel or soreness so that they're not feeling it when they're playing. What it's really doing is just throwing a Band-Aid over the recovery or a mask over the recovery that needs to take place. But the problem is the athlete doesn't have the time for that recovery to take place. They have to play 2 days later. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to just at least feel good enough to play. So that's a case, like that's why you see athletes use it so much after practices and after workouts, but it's not actually helping the recovery, the actual recovery process post-workout or post-training, whatever it is. It's probably hindering it more than anything.
So for the average person,
no,
definitely not afterwards.
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, that's definitely it's definitely good to know that. I mean, I know some people are probably like, no, what you said, because they think to an extent they're an athlete, right? Like, oh no, I train insane. I'm definitely an athlete. It's like, well, you don't have a multi-million-dollar contract with a professional sports team, so just recover your body properly.
That person just needs to learn to train a little bit smarter. That's their problem.
Absolutely. If you have one overall thing that you would want to leave the audience with, someone that is just starting out on their fitness journey, what would it be?
Somebody that's just starting out, I would say.
Or they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
They're thinking about starting out.
I would say picking one thing that if you asked yourself, can I commit to this and do it on a regular basis and have it not impact my life in a negative way? Start with that one thing and then just keep racking up the small wins from there. Once you get consistent with one thing, then pick one more aspect to add into your regimens. Okay, what is realistic for me given my life circumstances and how my days are panned out that I can consistently do and it not add stress into my life? Because that's the main thing that throws people off in the end, is they try and do too much, and instead of using fitness to enhance their livelihood, they execute it in a way that only adds stress, or at least they perceive it as adding stress. So it's either the plan sucks or your mindset needs to change. One of the two is always the reason why somebody falls off. So I would just say one thing at a time, stack up the small wins.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on again. Every time, I love having you on. Every time I learn something new, and every time I love the fact that, I've been a personal trainer. You are a personal trainer, but your
so
level
much
of
has
knowledge
changed since the last one that we did. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on as well. I'll always be more than happy to come on whenever I get the chance.
Yeah, man. And you doing this during peak week too? You're less than a week out. Your show's on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, less than a week out, dude. I mean, that's just I really appreciate that more than you know.
I'm chilling now.
Good luck on your competition.
The food's much higher than what it's been. Yeah. So it was a good time.
When was like the lowest point for you?
I haven't gone below 1,800 calories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. That's why I do such a long prep, is just so that I don't have as much stress in one given day. So that I just run a little bit more between like a moderate and high surplus, but I just do it for a longer period of time. So I find that much better than a shorter prep where you're really digging yourself into a hole each day.
Yeah. It's definitely more sustainable, especially for, doing shows for a month and a half long.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
Well, like I said, thank you very much for coming on. Your website is pathtoprogress.net.
Yes.
For anyone that wants any kind of coaching help at all. Your Instagram handle is, I know you got 2 of them, right? 2 or 3 of them?
Nah.
You want to say those
I
really
only
quick?
have the one. I mean, I have them both,
right.
but my quote unquote training account is now my training account and personal account. I don't use my other one. So it's just the one.
Okay. And that's Zack Venios _. Okay. Awesome.
Yep. YouTube as well. I started a YouTube channel recently for longer form content. Right now I've just been posting more of my bodybuilding related stuff. But once I'm done with contest prep season, I'll be putting up more long form content with tips and advice more related to general population in addition to bodybuilding. So definitely subscribe there. Be on the lookout for that in the future as well.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I'll drop those links down below too, so anyone who's listening can take a look at everything that you got going on, man.
Sweet.
Again, thank you very much for coming on. And for all you listening out there, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. Post clips 3 times a week on Instagram, and give us a follow and let us know if you're going to be on your fitness journey here in the future. Thank you all for listening. And Zack, thank you again very much for all the knowledge and information you blessed the audience with today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And as always, for you guys listening out there, stay blessed.